The Houston Texans might have one of the scariest teams in the NFL. And I'm not just saying that because of one player. I'm saying it because when you look at what's happening at Texans training camp, this entire roster is starting to look ridiculous. CJ Stroud is entering a massive season. Nico Collins is already one of the best receivers in football. Jaden Higgins looks like he's ready to take a huge year 2 jump. Tank Dell is finally working his way back. They added David Montgomery to the backfield. They upgraded the offensive line. And you even got rookie guys fighting for roster spots, starting to make some noise. Martin Klein and Lewis Bond. And somehow, the offense might not even be the best part of this football team. Because on the other side, you got Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, Derek Stingley Jr., Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock, Jalen Petrie. And Houston went out and added Reed Blankenship to that secondary. They even got young guys like Kamari Ramsey developing behind them. And now you even got Jadeveon Clowney back in Houston. This isn't just a team with a couple superstars anymore. Houston is deep. And after everything we're seeing at training camp, I genuinely think the NFL needs to start looking at the Houston Texans differently. Because this might be one of the most complete rosters in football. Let's start with training camp, because I know some people are going to say, it's August, it's just practice. And you're right. I'm not going to crown somebody Super Bowl champions because they made a catch at training camp. But you can start looking for signs. And Houston has given us a lot of them. We've seen CJ Stroud have some really impressive moments. One of his best days included a 2-minute drill where the offense really started clicking. We've seen Jaden Higgins consistently show up. We've seen the defense give the offense problems. We've seen young and unexpected players fighting for roster spots. And now we're seeing Tank Dell take another major step toward playing football again. That's what has me excited. It's not one viral training camp clip. It's what's happening across the entire roster. Stroud doesn't have to do everything anymore. And obviously, everything offensively starts at number 7. This is a huge season for him. We've already seen the ceiling. We saw what happened when Stroud came into the NFL and immediately took Houston from being one of the worst teams to being relevant. But now the expectations are completely different. Nobody cares about potential anymore. Houston wants to win a championship. And the good news for Stroud? Look around him. This might be one of the deepest groups of weapons Houston has given him. Start with Nico Collins. We already know what Nico can do. He's your number 1 receiver. He's big, he's physical, he can win downfield, he demands attention. But what makes Houston so interesting is what they're building around Nico. And that's where Jaden Higgins comes in. I don't want to make this entire video about Higgins, but we have to talk about what's happening with this dude. Because his development could change this entire offense. Higgins shows flashes as a rookie. Now we're in year 2, and throughout camp, his name keeps coming up. He's making plays. He's developing chemistry with Stroud. He's competing against an elite secondary every day. And he looks like a legitimate candidate to establish himself as Houston's number 2 receiver. That's huge, because think about the domino effect. Nico Collins is your established number 1. Higgins develops into a legit number 2, and suddenly, Houston doesn't need Tank Dell to come back immediately and become the player he was before the injury. They could take their time with him, and that might be your best possible situation for Tank. Because Tank Dell is finally getting closer, and man, considering what happened to him, just seeing this dude back on the field is crazy. He hasn't played since that devastating injury in December of 2024. He missed the entire 2025 season. And now we watch the progression, individual work, running routes, full speed work, and now, team drills. Tank Dell caught his first pass during 11-on-11 work. That's a massive step. But here's why this fits into the bigger Texans story. Houston doesn't need to rush him. If Nico is Nico, and Higgins continues to develop, Tank Dell becomes another weapon. You can move him around, create mismatches, use his speed, get the ball in his hands, take shots downfield, and gradually increase his role as his body allows it. Think about preparing that as a defense. Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins, Tank Dell, and there's even more competition behind those 3. Because one of those names that keep popping up is rookie Lewis Bond. And this is exactly what I mean when I talk about depth. Bond isn't walking into Houston as some superstar first-round pick. he's a 6th round rookie. Normally, we're talking about whether a guy drafted that late is even going to make the football team. But Bond has been making people notice him. His route running, his hands have stood out, and he's been making a legitimate push for one of those final receiver spots. Now let's be realistic. He's got a tough road. Look at Houston's receiver room. Nico, Higgins, Tank, Jalen Noel, Xavier Hutchinson, Justin Watson. There aren't unlimited roster spots, but that is exactly what you want. Make those guys compete. And there's another rookie I want y'all to remember. Marlon Klein, 6'6", around 250 pounds. 2nd round pick out of Michigan. And when Houston drafted this dude at 59, there were definitely people questioning it. Because the college receiving production wasn't anything crazy. But physically, you could see what Houston saw. This dude can move for someone that big. He ran a 4.61 at the combine. He's athletic. He's physical. He could block. And Houston believes there's more receiving ability than there was when we saw him in college. And now we're starting to get little glimpses of that during practice. We've seen Klein getting down the field. We've seen the athleticism. We've seen him finish plays in the end zone. Now again, training camp. I'm not telling you Marlon Klein is suddenly Travis Kelce, but this is what you want from a rookie. Show me something. Give coaches a reason to keep expanding your role. Because if Klein eventually becomes a legitimate receiving threat, in addition to what he could give you as a blocker. Now look at the options Houston has at tight end. Dalton Schultz, Brevin Jordan, Foster Moreau, and this 6'6" athletic rookie developing behind them. That's another position where Houston potentially has options. And we still haven't even talked about the running backs. Houston went out and got David Montgomery, and I think that was one of their smartest moves, because this offense doesn't need Stroud throwing the football 50 times every week. Give him a running game. David Montgomery gives you that physical style. Woody Marks gives you another option. And then there's Jawar Jordan. Jordan is another guy who's been making noise. When he finally got his opportunity last season, he exploded for 101 rushing yards on 15 carries. And now he's having a strong training camp. He's currently behind Montgomery and Marks. But that's exactly my point. Depth. Houston isn't relying on one running back. They're not relying on one receiver. They're building an offense where different players can hurt you. Now we have to talk about what I think might be the most important part of this entire Texans team. The offensive line. Because we could sit here all day talking about CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins, Tank Dell, David Montgomery, Marlon Klein, all these weapons. But none of that matters if CJ Stroud doesn't have time to throw the football. And Houston knows that. That's why when you look at what Houston did this offseason, they didn't just bring back the same offensive line and hope everything magically got better. They attacked the problem. They added veterans. They added a 1st-round rookie. They created competition. And they're continuing to develop the young linemen they already had. This offensive line could look completely different. And let's start with the rookie, Keelan Rutledge. Houston used the 26th overall pick on this dude. 6'4", around 330 pounds. And if you watched him, this dude plays mean. That's what Houston wanted. Physicality, power, somebody who could move people. But what's really interesting is what Houston is doing in training camp. Rutledge played right guard in college. Houston has been working him at center. That's a massive adjustment. Now you got to snap the football. You got to identify what's happening in front of you. You got to communicate. And you got CJ Stroud directly behind you. So I'm not expecting this dude to walk into the NFL and immediately know everything. But everything coming out of camp suggests he's embracing it. And apparently Houston had to actually tell this dude to dial it back at times because how physical he is. I love that. Obviously don't hurt your teammates, but give me offensive lineman has to be told, hey bro, chill out a little bit. Instead of somebody we're begging to become more physical. Because that mentality fits what DeMeco Ryans wants Houston to become. Tough, physical, beat people up at the line of scrimmage. And imagine if Rutledge actually develops into Houston's long-term center. Now you're talking about putting a 1st-round talent directly in the middle of your offensive line for years. But Houston was smart. They didn't say, okay, Keelan, you're a 1st-round pick. Go fix everything. No, They surrounded these young offensive linemen with veterans, and one of the biggest additions is Wyatt Teller. This dude has been one of the better guards in football during his career. He's been to multiple Pro Bowls, he's physical, he's experienced, and most importantly, he knows what winning football in the trenches is supposed to look like. That's exactly the type of veteran I want around somebody like Rutledge. Because now the rookie isn't learning everything by himself. He's got dudes in the offensive line room who's been through NFL seasons, who have seen every defensive front, who understands protections, who understands how to prepare. And Taylor isn't the only one. Houston also went out and got Braden Smith, and I think this one could end up being extremely important because Smith gives Houston an established NFL tackle. This isn't some developmental guy they're hoping eventually figures everything out. This dude has years of starting experience, and that's something Houston desperately needed. Because when you're protecting a franchise quarterback like CJ Stroud, give me stability. Give me somebody who understands what NFL edge rushers are trying to do. Give me someone who's been in those battles before. And now you got Braden Smith walking into the offensive line room with all these young players. That's valuable on the field and in the meeting room. And here's another name people shouldn't forget. Ariante Ursary. Houston drafted him in the second round last year. He started 15 games as a rookie. Was everything perfect? No. He's still developing. But that's what makes year 2 so important. Because an offensive tackle is one of the hardest positions to immediately dominate in the NFL. You're going from college, defensive ends, to dealing with absolute freaks every Sunday. And Ursary got thrown into that experience as a rookie. Now he's got an entire NFL season behind him. Another offseason, another training camp. And now he's surrounded by more veteran offensive linemen. And that's exactly how you want a young tackle to develop. If Ursary takes a year 2 jump, that could be massive for Stroud. And when you finally put everything together, I finally understand what Houston's trying to do. They don't want Stroud playing backyard football every Sunday. They want to be physical. That's why you bring in David Montgomery. That's why you draft a monster like Keelan Rutledge in the first round. That's why you bring in Wyatt Teller. That's why you add veteran experience with Braden Smith and Evan Brown. That's why developing Ursary and Fisher is so important. Houston wants to be able to line up and say, we're running the football. Stop us. And if you can't, now everything opens up. You got play action. Now linebackers have to step forward. Now safeties start creeping down. And guess who's waiting behind them? Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins, Tank Dell. That's when this offense gets scary. And that's ultimately why I keep coming back to this offensive line. Because somebody wants to know, can CJ Stroud take that next step? Maybe. But let's give him the opportunity. Imagine Stroud standing in a clean pocket, Nico Collins outside, Jaden Higgins developing into receiver 2, Tank Dell coming back, Martin Klein potentially giving you another tight end weapon, David Montgomery forcing defenses to respect the run. Now what do? You can't just pin your ears back and rush Stroud every play. You can't automatically double Nico. You can't completely ignore the running game. That's how an offensive line affects everything. And I'm not going to pretend like everything is automatically fixed. That's important. Putting a bunch of names together doesn't guarantee you're going to have a great offensive line. Rutledge is a rookie learning a position he hasn't played extensively before. Ursary is still developing. Fisher has things to prove. And veterans had to stay healthy. And these 5 guys had to actually develop chemistry. That's why I'm watching this group as closely as anything during the rest of training camp. Who's starting? Where's Rutledge playing? How quickly is he learning center? How do Teller and the young guys look together? How does Braden Smith hold up? Does Ursary take that second year jump? Does Fisher look better entering year 3? Because if the answer is yes, then I'm going to become even more confident in Houston. Because offensive line might be the final piece. And then there's this defense. And this is why I'm so high on Houston. Because we spent all this time talking about the offense. And we haven't even got to what might be the strength of this football team. This defense is disgusting. Start up front. Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, and Houston decided that apparently that wasn't enough. So Jadeveon Clowney is back in a Texans uniform. Now I'm not telling you Clowney is the superstar he was when Houston drafted him number 1 overall. That's not what they need him to do. They already have Anderson. They already have Hunter. Clowney could be another veteran piece in that rotation. Fresh bodies, different looks, more pressure. And behind them, Houston's secondary is ridiculous. Derek Stingley Jr. has developed into one of the most premier corners in football. Then you got Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie, Kalen Bullock. That's what makes Houston so difficult. They can get after your quarterback without having to sacrifice the back end. And we're seeing this defense challenge Stroud and this offense through training camp. Good. That's exactly what I want. Iron sharpens iron. Jaden Higgins having to go against these guys every day is going to make him better. Stroud dealing with pressure every day is going to make him better. The offensive line having to block Houston's defensive front is going to expose problems now instead of September. And we're even seeing lesser known players step up. Colin Wright is an undrafted corner who's been making plays and just picked off Stroud in practice. Maybe he makes the team. Maybe he doesn't. But when even the guys fighting for roster spots are making plays, that's competition. The Texans don't have to rely on one superstar. And this is really the entire point. Tell me who Houston has to rely on. Is it CJ Stroud? Obviously he's extremely important, but they don't need him playing superhero ball every week. Is it Nico Collins? He's receiver 1, but now Higgins is developing and Tank is returning. Is it David Montgomery? You still got Woody Marks and Jawar Jordan. Is it Will Anderson? Okay. You still got Daniel Hunter and Clowney. What about the secondary? You got talent everywhere. That's what scares me about Houston. The best teams aren't just top heavy. They're built to survive injuries. They're built to survive a star having a bad game. They're built to win in different ways. Houston can potentially win in a shootout. Houston can potentially run the football. Houston can rush the quarterback. Houston can cover. And we already seen this defense carry them when the offense wasn't playing its best football. Now imagine if the offense catches up. That's ultimately why I think this season feels different. Houston isn't the cute young team anymore. We're past that. Stroud isn't the exciting rookie anymore. D'Amico Ryans isn't a new head coach anymore. The expectations have changed. It's time to win. And when I look at what's happening during training camp, I see a roster that might be finally ready for that expectation. Stroud is getting tested. Higgins is developing. Tank Dell is getting healthy. The running back room is deep. The offensive line is being rebuilt. The defensive line might be the most nastiest in football. The secondary is loaded. And there's legitimate competition further down the roster. Does that guarantee anything? Heck no. It's August. They gotta prove it when the games count. But if the offensive line holds up, if Stroud takes another step, if Higgins' camp translates to Sundays, and if Tank Dell gets anywhere close to what he was before that injury, then Houston doesn't have any weaknesses left. And that's why I'm saying it right now. The Houston Texans aren't just an AFC South team anymore. They're not just a young team that's fun to watch. They're not just CJ Stroud and a couple good defensive players. This roster is loaded. Offense, defense, star power, young talent, veterans, depth. And one of the biggest things we're seeing during training camp is the competition inside this building is real. And that's what championship teams need. So no, I'm not crowning Houston in August, but I'm saying this. If what we're seeing at Texas training camp carries into the regular season, the Houston Texans have everything they need to make a run at a Super Bowl. And the rest of the NFL, y'all better be ready. Thank y'all for watching. This is DRDTakes, and God bless.